Washington State and Oregon State to the Big 12 is something that we've been on for the last year, but there are parts that are misconstrued. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job, and that would be very fun because rent is not cheap. That guy right there is Nathan Brown of Big 12 Mafia. Bomber joins the show today to talk about Washington State, Oregon State, that Big 12 rumor. We'll also hit how legit is the ACC bringing Big 12 schools to its conference, as many as 10 per someone's report, and we'll also give you Nathan Bomber Brown's preseason Big 12 top 5. Off the riff here, a lot of people have seen now the source, the faceless, nameless guy who tweets out a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff that's on the cutting edge of realignment, MHVER3, whoever he is, says the Big 12 via ESPN giving basically a sponsorship of Washington State and Oregon State could add those two schools. Nathan, you and I specifically have been on this for about a year or more so now. What are people missing about this report? What are people getting wrong about this report?
Well, for one thing, Washington State and Oregon State, fantastic school. I would love to have them in the Big 12. So it has nothing to do with want. It all has to do with sort of a sequencing of events. And Big 12 is not going to pick up anybody in the West until the East is settled. That means Florida State and Clemson. Legal troubles are either done through a judgment or they have a settlement. And once that amount is determined, then they'll figure out how many schools are going to be leaving that conference. Because you asked this thing about ACC. Look, the ACC is in trouble, not because it's not the strongest brand in the world. They're making more money than the Big 12 is right now, but it's because they're eating themselves alive. Yeah. Florida State and Clemson, arguably their best brands, want out. They don't want to stick around. Even if they got paid more money, they don't care. They want to move on, and because of that, it's an investment you can't put any money towards. So, jumping back to Washington State and Oregon State, they're saying, "Hey, help us, please, right? We've got this money we can do something with. We have some other things we can get creative." And it is the easiest thing to do would be a scheduling thing. I know that came up, to have some sort of a scheduling where they maybe do four or five games a year, up to 8, I guess. And if you can find the schools that can fit them into their schedule, that's all well and good. But all the schools on the east side of the country for the Big 12 do not want to travel to Corvallis or Pullman. So there would need to be some negotiations there. But in my opinion, realignment is off the table until we get something settled with the ACC.
What is the soonest then? You got to pull the ACC timeline now alongside this Pac-12, the assets that are left over for Washington State, Oregon State. What is the soonest that those two schools can become full-time Big 12 members? 8/3/26. They can't leave until that time. If they leave before 8/3/26, they lose all the money that they got in the settlement from the Pac-12. So it's not money that's just available right this second. They can spend whatever they want. The judge says you have to do certain things. You have to keep some monies back so that by that time, you're basically released with any of the other conflicting things they had with the old Pac-12. Once that date comes, 8/3/26, they can join anybody they want. They could merge with the Mountain West Conference if they can get into the ACC or the Big 12. But that money, and we're only talking about that money, if they leave before then, they're going to lose that stash that's sitting under the pillow that they can turn around and use to survive for the next couple of years. And I don't think they want to do that. You could see a settlement where they say, okay, we're going to move somewhere in 8/3/26, and hey, let's talk about it now, but they can't actually move until that date. I know you've talked to Bob Thompson a lot, formerly of Fox Sports, who is very knowledgeable when it comes to how TV contracts have a major role in revenue in college football. Would it make sense to you, and even in the conversations you've had with him or other sources, would it make sense for ESPN to actually want Washington State and Oregon State in the Big 12?
I don't know. I mean, they bring numbers. They're well over the average in viewership for the Big 12. So from that standpoint, it doesn't hurt the Big 12 to bring them on. You'd have now 18 schools, but you're just adding more weight to the west part of the country, leaving the schools that are on the East Coast sort of sitting there. They've been sitting there a while. We're specifically talking about West Virginia, and they're the ones that have had to do all the traveling, going forward. Now in the new Big 12, it's not near that bad. They're now playing those regional rivalries a lot more. They're playing more of the East Coast and Midwest schools, and they come east maybe once every 3 or 4 years. Come west once every 3 or 4 years, and that's much better for them. You add more schools on the West Coast, it helps Utah and BYU. Maybe you could throw Colorado and the Arizona schools in there, but how does it do for UCF? How does it do for West Virginia? How does it do for Cincinnati?
It seems to me, too, the focus on adding a Louisville, adding a Miami would be much more hardy than that of Washington State and Oregon State, unless ESPN, for whatever reason it may be, wanting wall-to-wall coverage, says, hey, no, we need these two Pacific Northwest teams. We need them in the Big 12. We need that to happen in 2 years. So I think the thesis for me would be this is on the table, very possible. This isn't anything clickbaity, but it's just not yet.
Yeah, timing is just all wrong. They need to have this thing settled. There's no rush. Look, MH Fur, I love his tweets because they're engaging. They make you think. They're good thought experiment type posts, but some of them are just like out of this world. Like today, he posted about Gonzaga, and it's that rumor, Gonzaga and UConn to the Big 12 with the scheduling if they get Washington State, Oregon State, and all this. Look, realignment's football, people. There hasn't been a P4 realignment move in basketball ever. So, and I can't see one happening now. The ACC needs to get settled. Once those schools have their final destination, whether it's stay in the ACC, move to the Big 12, or go somewhere else, until that's resolved, I don't think you're going to get anything on the West Coast.
Love it. Coming up, is the East Coast going to eat us on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, FanDuel's where I go. Yes. August, early in the month, rent's due. They call me out of the bullpen. Hey, pay up. I love sports. I love them so much, but they're kind of gone away. And I wanted to make the MLB a little bit more entertaining for me, so I go to FanDuel.com. And FanDuel.com has a boost or bonus daily for all customers. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head to FanDuel.com. Start making the most of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. You visit FanDuel.com, and it helped me out with my rent this month. And college football is coming back too, and I cannot wait to put $1 million. I don't have $1 million to put on it, but to put some money on whoever's going to win the Big 12 championship, which is something we'll discuss later on in the show. FanDuel.com. Nathan Bomber Brown of Big 12 Mafia joining Locked On Big 12 today. Okay. I read this tweet, and here's how I love to preface it. It's from Old Gray Dog, paid for blue check mark. The profile picture is cheddar cheese, and the username is Football Dog. And my first thought is, okay, that's not somebody's Twitter account that I'm going to give very much weight to. Then I see this cat has written over 1,000 words on Twitter somehow about how the Big 12 will be poached by the ACC, and that conference via ESPN will pull from us up to 10 teams. How legit is that theory?
Well, I can just tell you right now, you take Florida State and Clemson out of the ACC, their value dropped at least to 35%. It goes down. So you're at 65% now. They're making the exact same amount of money now with Florida State and Clemson as the Big 12. I think they're separated by maybe $500,000 for the whole year. At each school, they're separated by $500,000, some silly number. You take out those two brands, and this is the thing, evidently, it's hard in ACC land to understand. You lose those two brands, and now you're down 35%. Now look at the value proposition ESPN has. They can have continued backfill with the ACC network. Let the ACC grow with Memphis and UConn and USF and Washington State and Oregon State. Fine, but now what is that value? They can go up maybe 5-10% by bringing in those schools. So now you're at a 50%
At least. Now, sorry, I went down too far. You're at 70% of the 100% that you would get at the Big 12. And it's a distressed asset. Like right now, the markets are down, right? The world markets, if you're invested at all, 401k or anything else, it's really down. And that would be a buyer's market. You could go in and get whatever you want. That's basically where the Big 12 is going to be. The ACC is going to be a distressed asset once Clemson and Florida State leave. I don't care where they go. And they're going to be able to move others in. And it just doesn't have the value proposition that Big 12 does.
The ACC network deal, that was a crux of the tweet, talking about how ESPN wouldn't give up on that, and how it brings in money because it's subscription based, and with that Big 12 media deal and ESPN not having a Big 12 centric channel, I don't know if that pushes the needle for me. I'm not sure if I could grasp the ACC network being something that is the reason that conference stays alive, at least how it looks today.
No, because how do I put this? The glory in the ACC network is the fact that they've got all these brands, and there's some good brands in the ACC at a distressed price. Yeah. They've got Florida State, and they're paying them, $33 million? Florida State's going to leave and go somewhere else and make $20 million.
Yeah, exactly. $20 to $30 million gap from the Big Ten and the SEC.
It's a huge asset for the ESPN. The difference is it costs a lot of money to build. It costs a lot of money to build the Pac-12 network, the Big Ten network, the SEC network. But essentially, ESPN could do half the production cost if they came to the Big 12 and shared that asset amount with Fox. And now you've got a Big 12 that's a lot more valuable, better brands, and once you get to 20 plus schools, now you've got something. You're truly coast to coast, and a lot of eyeballs in those areas that you're picking up schools. So if we were 3 years ago and the ACC was trying to get Big 12 people, I would say, they would have been in a better position because at that time, OU and Texas had just left, right? Or they announced they were going to left. Yep. ACC network, Pac-12 network, that moment should have gone in and just eaten alive what was remaining in the Big 12. They had an opportunity to do that. They didn't do it.
Can you pull me off of this stance? Because I don't think I'm right, and I need you to just tell me I'm not right.
Okay.
There was the moment last summer where George Kliavkov says, we haven't decided if we're shopping in the Big 12 yet. And within like a month, his conference is done. Does this mirror that at all? Do you get Kliavkov vibes from Jim Phillips? Do you feel as though there's still this cocky aura out of the ACC that eventually leads to their downfall?
Yeah, because they're talking bad about Florida State.
Yep.
They're in legal trouble with them. And it's one thing to say, hey, we have this disagreement with one of our schools and we're going to, continue to work through that. Hopefully we can settle. They didn't do any of that, did they? They went to the wall with hitting them with every press release they could through ACC media days. Hit them over and over. We're the best conference. We don't care who leaves. All this crap. And what does that do? If you're an investor, and let's just talk about private equity, if you could put money into two different entities, where would it go? The Brett Yormark led Big 12, who's dreaming big, wants to be the best conference, or the ACC that says we're the best and please respect us? That's it. To me, it's not even a choice.
And Yormark's rhetoric at media days, I thought, was so professional. He did not claim the Big 12 is number one. He said, we want to be number one. We understand where the other conferences are from a revenue standpoint, and our goal is to eventually become that. It wasn't this fly the flag of the Big 12 as king of the country. And it seems like the ACC rhetoric is a little too out there. The last thing I want to pick apart of this tweet says, this is a no-brainer. This direct quote. Utah and ASU come to mind, both of which not only have strong athletic commitments, but AAU status, but also want to associate with Stanford and Cal. He also brings up Arizona, Kansas, TCU. That's where I think this theory really loses me. I don't see why any of those schools right now would say, yes, I'd rather be in the ACC.
Do you think Utah wants to join a conference that's predominantly in the East Coast?
Right.
Who's Utah going to play? Cal, Stanford, maybe Washington, Oregon? But there's just it's too broken up. It doesn't make any sense. Now, could the ACC come in with a private equity stance that they were getting $3 billion to reorganize and recruit schools and stuff? Of course, nothing is impossible. And I would say this is not impossible, but it's highly improbable. Right now, if you look at everything, you look at entire landscape, Florida State and Clemson leave. The ACC is distressed. Schools want to get out of that distress, and they want to go to a conference that's not only stable, but has this huge potential. You're already at 30, you're already at 44 million now. Where would you be if we bring in Louisville, you bring in any of the schools from the ACC that are really the brands, right? Florida State and Clemson, we're not probably talking about them. But and Pitt is on that list. Virginia Tech's on that list. North Carolina State's on that list. I mean, the sky's the limit.
Coming up, let's talk football. It's coming up.
Sure.
Preseason Top 5 is right here, right now on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. I have a 2016 Nissan Maxima that's white with Arkansas plates sitting outside of my house right now. And guess what? We're in the middle of Savannah, Georgia, August, and there's a hurricane that causes flooding and tornadoes. little three things coming at you. So as the water is filling up my car, I was like, eBay Motors, hey, passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. Can you give me some new upholstery for my seats? They're like, dude, we have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and upholstery. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit. Keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. That is ebaymotors.com. Nathan Bomber Brown at Big 12 Mafia. There is football. We've talked a lot of expansion. We've talked a lot of realignment and how the Big 12 is going to move forward. But now finally, we are in football month. We're like 3 weeks away from actually seeing it on the gridiron. I got my copy of Pick 6 previews, Big 12 predictions here about where they will rank, saying last season BYU was the second worst team in the Big 12 conference. And hopefully this year they graded the second worst team. Hopefully this year things change a bit. For you, let's start with number 5. Who's the 5th best team in the Big 12 in 2024?
I actually have 3 schools that could be the 5th best team. Iowa State, West Virginia, and Kansas. I have as 5. And the reason I have them all as 5 is frankly because they're all pretty balanced teams. Kansas could threaten for the whole thing if they stay healthy. They could compete. West Virginia they're tough. They've been through the grind, and if Green can turn it around or at least play in the top 5 in quarterbacks, that school could fly. And then Iowa State is tough as nails. I think they're ready to go too. So the Big 12 is like this, though, right? You and I both know this. There's so many that can compete at the top end of the conference.
Yeah, looking at Sama at Iowa State, who's a huge offensive weapon. Daniels at Kansas with Neal in the backfield is going to be, again, offensive weapons. And Garrett Green with C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White behind him. Those are 3 really good offenses with names that most people now around the Big 12 especially know. And I like them all at 5. So the way that I see it and kind of the way that Brett Ciencia of Pick 6 Previews puts it is, yes, there's that range of Iowa State, Kansas, West Virginia, even Texas Tech can be considered in that in almost the 6 to 10 range. Who are guys that 5 to 10 that'll be sitting right there? Let's go to number 4 though. Who do you have at number 4 here?
I want to make sure I check my list because we're going to cover it tomorrow night. I have Arizona at number 4, and Fafita's great, but they lost their coach, right? He's a fantastic quarterback. Can he carry the whole team? It's questionable about their defense, and they have a tough schedule this year. So Arizona, I have at 4.
The way the Arizona roster graded according to Pick 6 Previews, which is one of the highest rated magazines in all of the country, is number 4. You've nailed it. Right on top of a Heisman voter. They've got to get you hooked up with their committee over there. Fafita being there with T-Mac at wide receiver as well. Talk about offensive weapons. Those 2 guys will be electric. And as I bring that up, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are on the same team. And maybe 2 of the most dangerous players in the country, bar none. Shedeur Sanders could end up being the best quarterback. Travis Hunter could end up being the best all-around player. I don't think they have the pieces around them to make that team a competitor at the top of the Big 12. However, I do think Arizona has enough continuity to compete.
Yeah, I mean, look, they played well in the Pac-12 last year, and I think that they're
surprisingly so, by the way,
really good. Well, it was a surprise.
Yeah.
Fafita was a surprise. There's no question about it. You know, he got some teams sleeping at times, but defenses adjust. He's now been on tape for an entire year. I think it's going to be the Big 12's much tougher than anybody gives it credit for.
Yeah, could be a sophomore slump on the way for Fafita, but he's an awesome athlete.
I hope not, because I think he's fun to watch.
Great. All right, number 3, Nathan.
Let's see. I have Oklahoma State, and all I got to say is Ollie Gordon. I love Ollie Gordon. He beat BYU all by himself. They were down 23 points or something and ran all over my Cougars. So that's who I have it at number 3.
Number 3 for Oklahoma State for you. They are rated the number 21 team in the country, according to Pick Six previews after last season. I mean, the loss to South Alabama, the loss to UCF. You know, it's kind of the Mike Gundy. I go back to Iowa State game 12 years ago, and like there's always that one that he trips up. He has Oklahoma State at number 3 in the Big 12 preseason. Wow. So you've landed the plane once again. Ollie Gordon back there. I don't know. The reservation for me is, can Alan Bowman become a catalyst that drives the top tier offense? Ollie Gordon obviously can. Can Alan Bowman do it? The offensive line did not grade very well last season as well. So if they've got to improve for the Oklahoma State Cowboys to finish top 3. Who's your number 2?
I've gone back and forth. I've changed it about 7 times in 2 weeks.
I mean, I know there are 2 very obvious teams left that we haven't hit. Yeah.
Utah and Kansas State, right? They both have a puncher's chance. On my list currently this second, I might change it after the show. I have Utah number 2, and that's because they've got some players that are absolutely fantastic that have a huge injury history, right? Cam, if he goes through the season, he might challenge for the Heisman at the end of the year. Yeah. I don't see it. I've watched him go down twice with similar injuries both times, and he's like Kenny Stabler. He can't keep his head out of the action. And in doing that, he's going to put himself, unless he reserves, unless Kyle Whittingham can say, hey, look, play behind your line a little bit more instead of being out in front of them, and then you won't get hurt. So I've got Utah number 2, and I was going to say, just listen to some of these players they got returning. They got Micah Pittman, tight end Landon King. They have Brant Keithy, Micah Bernard, Jalen Glover, and it just continues. Cameron Calhoun's a new receiver. I know they got a receiver from USC, so they're going to be loaded. Utah is really, really good. And I will say this, if Utah doesn't win either the Big 12 or a playoff game this year, I think it's probably the biggest failure under Kyle Whittingham. He's got a team that honestly should be top 4 in the country and should win a playoff game this year.
Very good chance that Utah could be a non-champion bid to the at-large bid. To college
I would see that, yes.
And there may be a point where you get to the end of the season, Utah's 11-1, and you're almost wanting them to lose that Big 12 championship. So a 10-2 or 9-3 Kansas
that's right.
State. Yep. So Utah, according to Pick Six previews last year, I find this funny, Nathan, and you as the BYU guy. Nice hat, by the way. Last season, scoring offense, 100th in the nation. Points per play, 97th. Total offense, 94th. And yards per play, 103rd. And the rebuttal you would get from Utah fans was they had a catastrophic all-time terrible injury season, and they're exactly right. I've never seen so many guys go down that you look around the room and say, we got to throw the season out the window. We can't indict Kyle Whittingham in Utah based on what happened last season. They still won 8 games.
See, I think that's BS. Yeah, it's total crap, right? That's Utah PR as far as I'm concerned. Every team deals with injuries. Every team recruits for backups going 2 and 3 deep. Every team is hit with these catastrophic injuries. Utah, that is all PR. They have to go out and win some games. They've won a Pac-12 back-to-back, a conference that was down. Yeah. USC was down. UCLA certainly was down. Oregon was the only one that could win consistently, and they would lose some oddball game every year. They couldn't get to the playoffs. Look, Pac-12, in my opinion, they had all the flash in the pan. They had nothing on the field. Utah won a conference that it was down. They were in a conference in a historically down period of 12 years. So wipe it off the screen. Right? Those Rose Bowl losses don't count for anything right now. And just look forward.
And the Big 12 is the toughest place to road win in the country. They travel to UCF, and for some reason, they gave them the easiest schedule in the conference. So if they just play football and stay healthy, they will be a 10-2, 11-1 team. No doubt about it. But if they don't, it's not because they had catastrophic injuries. It's because they still didn't fill these roles they need to be a top-tier playing school. That's all I'm saying.
I love that Bleacher Report has announced the entire Utah offense as their bounce back player of the year in 2024, because that's just how bad things are. You're right. I mean, there is the excuse of, you hear a lot of new Big 12 teams, and you heard it out of some BYU fans. Hey, we're adjusting. We're adjusting. No. Right. We don't have to. There's not a, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to give you guys a couple years to settle in. No. Go win. Go, despite the circumstances, go win. You have Kansas State at number 1. What sets them apart from everybody else and makes them your conference champion preseason?
Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, and their coach is really good.
I love Chris Kleiman. I remember vividly during COVID, Baylor goes 2-7. Their only wins being a dilapidated Kansas, Leipold early years, and they beat Kansas State that year. And everybody thought kind of after that game, Baylor sucked so bad that Chris Kleiman might lose his job. There were murmurs that he wasn't a good fit at Kansas State, and now has mowing through the Big 12 conference. And last season didn't meet expectations, but that evens you out a bit going into this year, gives you a chip on your shoulder. I like Kansas State a lot. So Nathan, go back to your top 5 for me, starting at 5.
Yeah, 5. So I've got a tie: Iowa State, West Virginia, Kansas State. Then I have Arizona, then Oklahoma State, Utah, and Kansas State. By the way, you didn't tell me, was I on with all 4 of those, or did I miss the final 2?
Pick 6 previews. At number 1, the Utah Utes.
Yeah, I thought that's what it would be.
And at number 2, the Kansas State Wildcats.
Yeah.
They had Utah at 1 based on return production from 2022, because we have no idea how any of those guys played in 2023 because they didn't.
They have 21 of 22 returning starters if everybody plays at their position. Yep. And that's hard to beat, especially when their schedule is powder puff. I would encourage you, if you want to bet the money line on any team Utah plays on the road, because Kyle Whittingham's going to have them amped up and he wants to score points. He wants to retire. And if he wins a playoff game, I say he's gone.
Call it. Yep, they already have the man in waiting. I love it. Nathan, thank you so much for joining the show today. As always, where can folks find more of your work?
At Big 12 Mafia, you've seen there on Twitter. You can also look me up at College Football Mafia on our YouTube channel. So Big 12 Mafia, College Football Mafia, and we have a show tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern.
That is Nathan Brown, a Big 12 Mafia, College Football Mafia. This has been and always will be Locked On. Come back tomorrow for even more fun. Dose Grande.